There exists a place where people in their ninth decade still tend gardens with steady hands, where grandmothers climb stairs without pausing for breath, where the concept of frailty seems almost foreign. This is not a fantasy or a genetic anomaly. It is the lived reality of countless elders across Japan, a nation where the average lifespan stretches well beyond what most Western countries can claim. The difference is not locked inside their DNA or hidden within expensive medical interventions. It lives in the movements they perform each morning before the world fully wakes. Walk into any clinic in the developed world and you will encounter a familiar pattern. Seniors arrive with smiles, claiming they simply feel a bit slower than before, perhaps a touch more tired. Beneath those smiles, diagnostic tests reveal a different story altogether. Arteries have begun to harden like old rubber, flexibility has vanished from joints that once moved freely, and the muscular strength that prevents devastating falls has quietly eroded by half. The tragedy is not just in these findings but in the fact that most people remain unaware until the damage has already reshaped their lives. By the time symptoms force them to seek help, years of decline have already passed. Yet this deterioration is not inevitable. The human body possesses a remarkable capacity for renewal, even in later decades. Patients in their late 60s and 70s have reversed courses that seemed irreversible, not through pharmaceutical solutions or costly procedures, but through deliberate, daily movements borrowed from a culture that has perfected the art of aging well. These are not exercises in the conventional sense, not gym routines or fitness regimens. They are woven into the fabric of everyday life, as natural as breathing, as essential as eating. In the early morning light of Japanese parks, you might witness something that appears almost choreographed. Groups of elderly people gather in loose formations, their faces calm and focused. A melody drifts from a speaker, bright and encouraging, like something from a different era. They begin to move in unison, arms rising and falling, bodies bending and stretching, legs stepping in rhythm. This is radiocalisthenics, known locally as Regio Taiso, a practice that has endured for nearly a century. To the uninformed observer, it might seem quaint or overly simple, hardly the kind of activity that could alter the course of aging. That assumption could not be more wrong. The beauty of this practice lies in its elegant efficiency. 10 minutes is all it requires, yet within that brief window, every major muscle group receives attention. The arms sweep through space, the legs engage and release, the core stabilizes, the back extends and flexes. Nothing is left idle. Research examining this daily ritual has uncovered remarkable outcomes. Seniors who commit to these 10 minutes show measurable improvements in balance, reducing their likelihood of falling by nearly a third. Falls represent one of the most catastrophic events in an older person's life, often marking the beginning of a downward spiral toward dependence and hospitalization. Preventing even one fall can mean the difference between continued independence and institutional care. Beyond balance, the practice enhances flexibility and stimulates circulation in ways that medication cannot replicate. Blood pressure measurements taken before and after consistent participation reveal meaningful reductions. The joints, which stiffen with inactivity and age, begin to remember their full range of motion. One woman in her mid-70s, plagued by persistent knee pain and occasional dizziness, discovered transformation through this morning routine. Within weeks of joining her neighbors in the park, her discomfort diminished. Her blood pressure, which had been creeping upward despite dietary changes, stabilized. She described feeling a decade younger, a sentiment her physician confirmed by observing improved posture and stamina during examinations. No additional prescriptions were needed. The movement itself became the medicine. What makes radiocalisthenics accessible to anyone, anywhere, is its complete lack of barriers. No equipment is required, no membership fees, no special clothing. The routines are freely available, complete with music and visual guidance, waiting for anyone willing to invest 10 minutes each morning. The movements are gentle enough for those with limited mobility yet engaging enough to produce measurable change. This is exercise stripped of intimidation, returned to its most fundamental purpose, keeping the human body functional and resilient. While these synchronized morning movements prepare the body for the day ahead, another practice works even deeper into the architecture of aging. Traditional Japanese homes, for centuries, contained very few chairs. People sat directly on tatami mats, often in a kneeling position called seiza. From this low position, they would rise to standing, lower themselves back down, and repeat this transition countless times throughout each day. Meals were taken on the floor, ceremonies conducted while kneeling, rest periods spent in positions that Western bodies abandoned generations ago. What appeared to be simply cultural preference was actually a powerful form of strength training disguised as daily living. The act of lowering yourself to the floor and rising back up without assistance demands extraordinary coordination and strength. Your hips must maintain flexibility, your ankles must possess deep range of motion, your knees must bend fully without complaint, and your thighs and core must generate enough force to lift your entire body weight against gravity. This is not a simple task. In fact, researchers have identified the ability to sit on the floor and stand back up without using your hands as one of the strongest predictors of longevity. Adults who can perform this movement demonstrate a mortality risk 5 times lower than those who cannot. The floor becomes a testing ground, a daily assessment of whether your body retains the strength and mobility necessary for a long life. One elderly man, still taking his evening meals seated on the floor with his grandchildren, demonstrated this vividly when his son-in-law visited from abroad. The younger Western man struggled even to sit comfortably cross-legged for more than a few minutes, and when it came time to stand, he needed to push off with his hands, groaning with effort. Meanwhile, the 70-year-old host rose smoothly and effortlessly, moving to the kitchen to prepare tea as if standing from the floor were the most natural thing in the world. Decades of this daily practice had preserved his body in ways his visitor could barely comprehend. His joints remained fluid, his muscles strong, his balance sharp. These qualities do not arise from occasional exercise but from movements repeated so often they become inseparable from life itself. The floor, in this context, becomes not an obstacle but an opportunity, a place where strength is both tested and built every single day. The movements that preserve vitality do not always look like exercise at all. Sometimes they appear as nothing more than a leisurely stroll through a quiet neighborhood, the kind of walk that seems too gentle to matter. Yet timing transforms this simple act into something profoundly therapeutic. Across Japan, it is common to see elderly people walking slowly after they have finished eating, not rushing anywhere in particular, simply moving through space with calm deliberation. This is not leisure for its own sake. It is a metabolic intervention disguised as a pleasant habit. When food enters your body, blood sugar rises as a natural consequence of digestion. In younger people, this process is managed efficiently by insulin, which shuttles glucose into muscle cells where it can be burned for energy. But as the decades accumulate, this system begins to falter. Cells become less responsive to insulin signals, a condition known as insulin resistance. Sugar lingers in the bloodstream longer than it should, bathing the arterial walls in glucose that damages their delicate inner lining. This process feeds the accumulation of visceral fat, the dangerous kind that wraps around internal organs, and it accelerates the progression toward diabetes. Walking immediately after a meal short-circuits this cascade. When you move, your muscles become hungry for fuel, pulling glucose directly from the blood without waiting for insulin to do all the work. Studies tracking blood sugar levels in older adults have documented reductions of more than 20% when a 15-minute walk follows a meal. This is not a trivial decrease. Some pharmaceutical interventions struggle to achieve comparable results, and they come with side effects that movement does not carry. The walk need not be vigorous or long. A gentle pace maintained for 10 to 15 minutes is sufficient to activate this metabolic rescue. One woman in her mid-70s had watched her blood sugar readings climb steadily despite careful attention to her diet. She eliminated sweets, reduced portions, counted every carbohydrate, yet the numbers refused to cooperate. Her physician suggested something that seemed almost too simple to work: walk after eating. Skeptical but willing, she began taking short strolls around her neighborhood after lunch and dinner. Within weeks, her glucose monitor began showing patterns she had not seen in years. The dangerous spikes flattened. Her midsection, which had stubbornly resisted every dietary intervention, began to shrink. Evening headaches that had plagued her for months disappeared entirely. The walks became non-negotiable parts of her day, as essential as the meals themselves. The mechanism behind this transformation extends beyond glucose management alone. Walking after eating also stimulates digestion, preventing the sluggish feeling that often follows large meals. It signals to your body that energy is being used rather than stored, shifting metabolic priorities in favorable directions. The practice requires no special equipment, no particular destination, not even good weather. Walking slowly through your home or along a hallway delivers the same benefits as a stroll through a garden. What matters is movement within 30 minutes of eating, when blood sugar reaches its peak and needs somewhere to go besides your arteries and fat stores. While walking addresses metabolism, other movements target the body's need for rotational flexibility and circulatory stimulation. In those same Japanese parks where radiocalisthenics unfolds each morning, you will also see elders standing upright, rotating their hips in wide, deliberate circles. They follow this with torso twists, turning their upper bodies from side to side while keeping their hips stable, breathing deeply throughout. These movements appear almost playful, like stretches a child might do without thinking. Yet they address problems that plague aging bodies with devastating regularity. As years pass, the spine becomes rigid, the hips lose their fluid range of motion, and circulation to the lower body diminishes. This stiffness does not merely cause discomfort. It restricts blood flow to vital organs, limits mobility in ways that lead to falls, and creates chronic pain that medications can only mask. Hip rotations work like lubrication poured into machinery that has begun to seize. The circular motion nourishes cartilage, maintains the joint space, and keeps arthritis from gaining ground. Torso twists strengthen the muscles that stabilize the spine, protecting posture and preventing the forward hunch that so many elders develop. These twists also massage the digestive organs, improving gut function in ways that static exercises cannot achieve. Research measuring the effects of daily rotational movements has found improvements in trunk flexibility approaching 30% after just 6 weeks of consistent practice. Balance scores increase by more than 20% over the same period. Better balance translates directly into fewer falls, and fewer falls mean preserving independence well into advanced age. One man in his late 70s had suffered with chronic lower back pain and occasional dizziness that made him fearful of leaving his home. His granddaughter encouraged him to join a group of elders who practiced these rotations and twists each morning. Initially, he felt foolish performing movements that seemed too basic to address his serious problems. Within a month, his pain had eased noticeably. His posture straightened. He could walk longer distances without fatigue, and his digestion improved as the twisting motions stimulated his intestines. Performing these movements requires only a few minutes and a small amount of space. Stand with feet positioned shoulder width apart. Rotate your hips slowly in wide circles, first in one direction, then the other, for about 30 seconds each way. Then place your hands on your hips and gently twist your torso from side to side, allowing your shoulders to turn while your hips remain stable. Breathe deeply as you move, letting the motion feel natural rather than forced. This brief practice, repeated daily, transforms stiffness into fluidity and reawakens circulation that has grown sluggish. Yet perhaps the most overlooked movement in the repertoire of Japanese elders is one that many Westerners over 50 cannot even attempt without toppling over. The deep squat, known as Yasumi-ishi or the resting squat, is a position where you lower yourself until your buttocks nearly touch your heels, balancing comfortably on the balls of your feet. In Japan, this is not considered exercise. It is simply a way to rest, to weed a garden, to wait for a bus, to interact with small children. Elders drop into this position without thought, remain there for extended periods, and rise back to standing with no assistance and no struggle. This single position activates every major muscle group in the lower body simultaneously. The thighs, glutes, and core must work in concert to maintain the squat, and rising from it requires explosive power that keeps these muscles strong and responsive. Studies examining the relationship between squatability and mortality have produced startling findings. The capacity to lower yourself to the floor and stand back up without using your hands correlates with a 5-fold reduction in premature death risk. The squat is not merely an exercise. It is a biological marker, a test that reveals whether your body retains the fundamental capacities required for a long and independent life. One elderly woman, raised in a home where chairs were scarce and floor sitting was the norm, still drops into a full squat when gardening or playing with her grandchildren. When a friend from another country visited at the same age, she attempted the same position and could not hold it for more than a few seconds before losing balance entirely. The difference was not genetic or mysterious. It was practice, repeated over decades until the movement became as natural as breathing. For those who have not squatted in years, the path back begins with gentle reintroduction, using walls or chairs for support, lowering only as far as comfort allows. The body adapts remarkably when given consistent opportunity, and flexibility returns with patient repetition. Among all the movements that Japanese elders practice daily, one stands above the rest in its capacity to extend both life and vitality. In parks at sunrise you will witness groups moving through space with extraordinary grace, shifting weight from one foot to the other with deliberate slowness, extending their arms in controlled arcs, breathing deeply as they flow through positions that challenge balance and coordination simultaneously. These are Tai Chi-inspired slow balance movements, sometimes called kokutiso in Japan, and they represent the pinnacle of what mindful movement can achieve for an aging body and mind. The power of these movements lies in their dual action. Physically, they strengthen the stabilizing muscles that keep you upright and steady, the small but crucial muscles around your hips, ankles, core, and spine. Neurologically, they sharpen the brain's coordination centers, forcing your nervous system to maintain constant communication with muscles throughout your body. This combination addresses the two primary causes of falls in elderly populations: weak stabilizers and delayed neural responses. When you move slowly and deliberately through positions that challenge your balance, you are essentially training your body's emergency response system, the reflexes that catch you when you stumble or adjust when terrain shifts unexpectedly. Clinical research examining these practices has produced results that seem almost too dramatic to believe. Seniors who engage in Tai Chi-style balance movements 3 times weekly reduce their fall risk by nearly half compared to those who remain sedentary. This is an extraordinary finding when you consider that falls represent the leading cause of injury-related death in people over 65. But the benefits extend far beyond physical stability. Studies tracking cognitive function in older adults who practice these movements have documented improvements approaching 20% after 6 months of consistent participation. Memory becomes sharper, processing speed increases, and symptoms of anxiety and depression diminish measurably. The slow, flowing motions act as therapy for both body and mind, addressing decline on multiple fronts simultaneously. One woman approaching her 80th year had become afraid to leave her home unaccompanied. Her legs felt unsteady beneath her, and her memory seemed to be fading in ways that frightened her deeply. Her daughter persuaded her to join a local senior group that gathered each morning for balance practice. The first sessions left her wobbling and embarrassed, unable to hold positions that others maintained with apparent ease. But the group encouraged persistence, and she returned day after day. 6 months later, her fear had vanished. She could stand on one leg while performing simple tasks, her memory had sharpened noticeably, and she described finally feeling at peace within her own body. Her physician, examining her during a routine visit, remarked that she demonstrated the balance capabilities of someone a decade younger. You do not need formal training or complex routines to access these benefits. Even simple practices deliver profound results, shifting your weight slowly from one foot to the other, extending your arms gradually through space, rotating through careful steps that require you to maintain control throughout the motion. 10 to 15 minutes daily is sufficient to begin rewiring both muscle and nerve, to teach your body that steadiness remains possible, that coordination can be relearned. The movements themselves are less important than the qualities they embody: slowness, control, mindfulness, and full body engagement. What becomes clear when examining all 6 of these practices together is that they are not isolated interventions but elements of a comprehensive approach to aging. Radiocalisthenics prepares the body each morning with rhythmic, full body engagement. Siza sitting and standing builds the fundamental strength required to move freely between floor and standing positions. Walking after meals manages the metabolic chaos that blood sugar spikes create. Hip rotations and torso twists maintain spinal flexibility and organ circulation. Deep squatting preserves the powerful lower body muscles that prevent frailty. And balance movements tie everything together, integrating strength, flexibility, coordination, and mental clarity into one practice. This integration reveals something profound about how Japanese culture approaches aging. These movements are not treated as medicine to be taken when illness arrives. They are woven into the texture of daily life from youth onward, so deeply embedded that they become invisible, as automatic as dressing or bathing. There is no separation between life and health maintenance, no distinction between functional movement and therapeutic exercise. The body is kept strong not through periodic bursts of gym attendance but through consistent, daily practices that require minimal time and no equipment whatsoever. Western culture tends to view exercise as something separate from ordinary existence, an activity requiring special clothing, designated times, and often significant expense. This creates barriers that many people, especially elders dealing with limited mobility or fixed incomes, cannot overcome. The Japanese approach dissolves these barriers entirely. Every movement can be performed at home, in a park, or even in a small apartment. None require more than 15 minutes. All can be modified to accommodate current ability levels, whether you are highly mobile or struggling with significant limitations. The practices scale to meet you where you are, then gradually expand what becomes possible. The invitation, then, is not to overhaul your entire life or commit to exhausting routines. It is simply to choose one movement and begin. Perhaps you start with 10 minutes of radiocalisthenics each morning, following along with free videos that guide you through the sequence. Perhaps you commit to walking for 15 minutes after dinner each evening, feeling your muscles pull glucose from your blood as you move. Perhaps you practice standing from a chair without using your hands, building the leg strength that predicts longevity. Perhaps you spend 5 minutes rotating your hips and twisting your torso, breathing deeply as you restore circulation and flexibility. Any starting point is valid because any movement is superior to remaining still. The body responds to consistent practice with remarkable generosity, even in advanced age. Muscles that have weakened can strengthen again. Joints that have stiffened can regain mobility. Balance that has deteriorated can be rebuilt. The science demonstrates these possibilities with unmistakable clarity, and the lived experience of Japanese elders proves that such transformations are not theoretical but achievable through simple, daily commitment. The ultimate wisdom here is not about adding more years to your life, though these practices certainly support longevity. It is about preserving the quality of the years you have, about maintaining the capacity to move freely, to think clearly, to engage fully with the world around you. It is about reaching your 80s or 90s still able to garden, to play with grandchildren, to walk without fear, to live rather than merely survive. These 6 movements, borrowed from a culture that has mastered the art of aging well, offer a pathway toward that kind of life. They ask very little: time measured in minutes, space measured in footsteps, equipment measured in nothing at all. What they offer in return is the possibility of remaining truly alive, fully yourself, until your very last days. The choice to begin is yours, waiting quietly in whatever movement calls to you first.